Hello and welcome. You're watching the news tonight, your daily roundup of all that has happened across India and the world. I'm Ishan Russell, and first let's take a look at the headlines we're tracking right now. 20 people, including 6 terrorists, killed in 4 separate attacks in Jammu and Kashmir. Prime Minister Modi calls them a desperate attempt to derail the atmosphere of hope and harmony. The Prime Minister makes a statement in the Lok Sabha, asks members to forgive Sadhvi Niranjan Jyoti's remarks. Unrelenting and united, the opposition signs a joint letter, seeks motion condemning the Union Minister's remarks. A day after 16 people lose their sight after surgeries at an eye camp, the Punjab government orders a probe into the incident. And protests sweep New York. 223 people arrested as demonstrators clash with the police for the second day over the grand jury decision to exonerate police officer in the chokehold death case. Well, our top story tonight, it has been a Black Friday across India because high security alert has been sounded in Kashmir after suspected Pakistani militants carried out a series of attacks today in 2 assembly segments headed to the polls in the coming week. Attacks on an army camp in Uri and on a search party near Srinagar sent out threatening signals as authorities in India promise strong action and say the situation is under complete control. Security analysts point out that Pakistan has a lot to answer for.
First, militants stormed an army camp at Mohara in Uri in the wee hours of Friday. Then, just hours later, gunmen opened fire on an army search party in Sora on the outskirts of Srinagar. At the army camp in Mohara in Uri, Indian Jawans killed all 6 militants in a fierce encounter after the raid. On the Indian side, 7 army men, including a senior officer, and 3 policemen lost their lives. The area has been sealed off after the encounter. All civilian movement stopped. Just hours later, militants struck again with an attack on a search party in Sora on the outskirts of Srinagar. An exchange of fire followed and a militant was shot dead. 2 hold-up militants, including a commander of the Lashkar-e-Taiba, were later shot dead. A large quantity of arms and ammunition have been recovered. More disturbing is the fact that both these areas are headed to polls in the 3rd and 4th phases next week. Uri votes on the 9th of December, Shora on the 14th. New Delhi called the attacks a sign of desperation by Pakistan and anti-national elements, assuring that security operations and the election process were on track.
Last few days the army has been intercepting the terrorists and eliminating them. So I think it's a sign of increased interception by army.
बराबर जो आतंकवादी भारत की सरहदों को पार करके आते हैं और यहाँ तबाही पैदा करते हैं इसे हिंदुस्तान में, वही सब सारे आतंकवादी पाकिस्तान में ही घरों में छिपे हुए हैं, उनको छुपा कर रखा गया है। क्या इसकी जवाबदेही पाकिस्तान की नहीं बनती?
Security experts echo the view in the backdrop of the massive turnout in the first 2 phases of the 5-stage elections and the success of the democratic process in the state so far. A militant attack in Naugam sector on polling day on the 3rd of December had been foiled too.
Pakistan game plan was to strengthen Islamic setup in Jammu and Kashmir region. But what is happening now, the democracy is strengthening last few years especially, and the voting percentage has gone up to 72%, which is not, Pakistan is not willing to accept that.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi is to address an election rally in Srinagar on Saturday ahead of the 3rd phase of polling on the 9th of December. Security has been stepped up after the attacks. 16 assembly segments of Jammu and Kashmir go to polls in this phase. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television.
Well, today's been called Black Friday because the terror didn't stop there. Later in the day, suspected militants carried out 2 grenade attacks, again in poll-bound areas in the Kashmir Valley. Close to 4 p.m., unidentified men lobbed a grenade at a security patrol at a crowded bus stand in the Tral district of, in Tral in Pulwama district. 1 person was killed and 6 people were reported injured in the incident. The attackers fled after the attack. No group has claimed responsibility so far. Earlier in the day, militants had hurled a grenade at a police station in Shopian, South Kashmir, which goes to the polls on the 14th of December. The Shopia area has been vulnerable to militants coming in from Doda region through the Pir Panjal range and have been using this area as a transit spot. And political parties have reacted strongly to these attacks, many saying more needs to be done.
This is possibly an outcome of the manner in which the people of Jammu and Kashmir have overwhelmingly voted in the first two phases of the ongoing assembly elections over here, which has proved to the entire world that the people of Jammu and Kashmir are ready to answer the bullet with the power of ballot. And this is a message which has possibly not gone down well with the elements opposed to democracy in India and democracy in Jammu and Kashmir particularly.
It's time Prime Minister made a statement to the nation as also before the Parliament detailing a blueprint and a plan to protect our borders and to ensure that any such provocative incidents where our Jawans lose lives daily, where Pakistan pushes terrorists into Indian territory, more so into J&K, will not be tolerated.
हर बुलेट की कोशिश को जम्मू कश्मीर के लोग बैलेट और मजबूत बैलेट से जवाब दे रहे हैं और आने वाले दिनों में भी देंगे। इस तरह के हताश और निराश जो आतंकवादी ताकतें हैं उनको किसी भी तरह का इस तरह की हरकतों से, इस तरह की साजिशों से फायदा होने वाला नहीं।
और हम लोग फिर कह रहे हैं कि राजनीति छोड़ के हम देश के साथ हैं कि जब देश की सुरक्षा के मसले पर प्रधानमंत्री कोई कठोर निर्णय लेंगे, समाजवादी पार्टी उस कठोर निर्णय के साथ करेगी।
गोली से गोली, गोली को गोली या बंदूक से बंदूक उत्तर देना ठीक है, लेकिन जब तक पाकिस्तान को हम उनकी भाषा में जवाब नहीं देते, तब तक इस प्रकार के एनकाउंटर और हमारे जवानों की शहादत होती रहेंगी।
नरेंद्र मोदी चुनाव में कम्युनलाइज करने के लिए हिंदू भाइयों को पाकिस्तान हिम्मत नहीं करेगा, आंख में आंख डाल के बात नहीं कर सकता है। लगातार गोला फेंक रहा है, लगातार हमारे सैनिकों के ऊपर, सिविलियंस के ऊपर गोले फेंक रहे हैं।
News from Parliament now, and as the government rejected the demand to dismiss Union Minister Sadhvi Niranjan Jyoti, the opposition pressed for a condemnation resolution denouncing her remarks as a compromise formula. The opposition's attempt at reconciliation came after Prime Minister Narendra Modi's statement in the Rajya Sabha disapproving her remarks.
As soon as the House met, members were on their feet demanding the dismissal of the minister. Deputy Chairman P.J. Kurian tried to pacify the members, but as the din continued, the House was adjourned till noon.
Up to 12:00 hours. Up to 12:00 hours.
When members reassembled for question hour, CPIM MP Sitaram Yechuri urged Chairman Mohammad Hamid Ansari to allow a censure motion condemning the remark.
There is a precedent. Allow us to move a resolution in the House condemning the remarks that were made which lead to the same disharmony. And communal disharmony in the House, and let that be considered by the House.
The chairman, however, said that he cannot admit resolution without a notice.
Any member has the right to move a document for consideration by appropriate procedures. The chair cannot be part of the political process.
Yechuri then suggested that the Prime Minister's speech be put to vote. However, both the chair and the government disapproved the proposal. As the protest continued, the House was adjourned first for 15 minutes and then till 2:30 p.m.
2 p.m., 2:30 p.m., 2:30 p.m.
In the post-lunch session, the demand for the resolution resonated once again.
A resolution in general disapproving of any inflammatory speech, any derogatory statement by any member of parliament, including ministers. It was the most reasonable proposition of the opposition. The government did say that they will come back. They got back to us this morning and they said we reject this.
5 bills in 2 days, sir. So our intention are clear. Our first demand on the floor of the House was, sir, we asked the minister to be sacked. But after listening patiently and respectfully to the Prime Minister, we have listened to him. We have scaled down that. We have been very reasonable. We are saying no need to sack her. just pass the resolution.
MOS Parliamentary Affairs Mukhtar Abbas Naqvi tried to placate the opposition.
खुद सदन के नेता अरुण जेटली जी ने कहा कि हम इसको किसी तरह से भी अप्रूव नहीं करते, निंदा करते हैं। खुद वेंकैया नायडू जी ने कहा, मैंने स्वयं कहा, और जब सदन ने कहा कि प्रधानमंत्री जी को आना चाहिए, प्रधानमंत्री जी को आकर के बात करनी चाहिए, तो प्रधानमंत्री जी ने आकर के कहा कि हम इस तरह के किसी भी बयान का न समर्थन करते हैं और हम इसको डिसअप्रूव करते हैं, स्ट्रांगली डिसअप्रूव करते हैं। हमें लगता है इसके बाद ये मुद्दा क्लोज हो जाता है।
As the standoff between the opposition and the Treasury benches continued, the Deputy Chairman urged both sides to agree to a truce by Monday.
I don't find any use in furthering this discussion because I know this is not going to be settled here. I think the leaders of the opposition parties and the government sit together and sort out and come with a solution at least by Monday.
Seeing no end to the logjam as the opposition refused to take up the private member's resolution, the chair adjourned the House till Monday.
The House stands adjourned to meet at 11 a.m. on Monday.
The opposition insisted on bringing condemnation resolution against Sadhvi Niranjan Jyoti's alleged invectives. But the government is also adamant. Now it remains to be seen if a middle path would emerge to resolve this deadlock. Reporting from Delhi, Kriti Mishra for Rajya Sabha Television.
And speaking in the Lok Sabha, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has said that he strongly disapproves of the use of unparliamentary language. He said this in reference to Minister Niranjan Jyoti's controversial remarks. He also urged the opposition to let the House function smoothly since the minister had apologized, but the opposition was not satisfied and walked out of the House.
MPs of the Congress, TMC, left parties and other opposition parties reached Lok Sabha on Friday with black bands across their faces as a mark of protest. It was the fourth day of protests against Minister Sadhvi Niranjan Jyoti's controversial remark. On the opposition's demand, the Prime Minister made a statement in the lower house a day after he spoke in Rajya Sabha. He urged the opposition to give up their protest since the minister had apologized for her remark. He also asked the members to try and understand the background the minister came from.
मंत्री श्री ने क्षमा मांगी है और एक नए मंत्री तो सभी वरिष्ठ नेताओं ने भी अपने अपने दल के लोग जो वहां बैठे हैं उनको भी अनुरोध करना चाहिए और इस विषय को समाप्त करके देश हित में अपने काम को आगे बढ़ाना चाहिए.
But the statement did not satisfy the opposition. Leader of the Congress party in Lok Sabha, Mallikarjun Kharge, said these remarks just divide the nation. He also said that the background of a person did not matter as the said person was a minister.
मंत्री लोग गण जो बाहर स्टेटमेंट एक नहीं, दो नहीं और आपके पक्ष के अनेक नेता भी ऐसे स्टेटमेंट दे रहे हैं जिससे सारे देश में ऐसा एक वातावरण तैयार हो रहा है जिससे कि समाज की एकता टूटने की आवश्यकता है.
The speaker also requested the opposition to let the House function, but the opposition parties led by the Congress walked out of the House. Parliamentary Affairs Minister Venkaiah Naidu called the opposition protest unfortunate.
I hope that they will realize the importance of Parliament and the expectation of the people and come back to the House and join the debate.
Union Minister Niranjan Jyoti had used derogatory language during a public meeting in Delhi. The opposition has been demanding her resignation ever since. With inputs from Shyam Sundar and Pranav Goswami, Bureau Report for Rajya Sabha TV.
And Parliament was the scene of protests both inside and outside the houses today. On a day when the opposition joined hands to keep the protests against the remarks of the Union Minister Sadhvi Niranjan Jyoti, the ruling party also held a demonstration for what it called the obstructionist approach of the opposition. 9 parties also signed a letter seeking a joint resolution condemning the remarks of Niranjan Jyoti.
With a black band around his mouth, Congress Vice President Rahul Gandhi joined opposition leaders to protest against the abusive comments made by Union Minister Sadhvi Niranjan Jyoti. He said the House was not following democratic processes. Members of the Congress, the TMC, the Muslim League and the Aam Aadmi Party MPs took part in the protest in the Parliament complex.
The attitude is to not let
people's expression be heard in that house. That is the attitude. And it is a mindset of the top leadership of the country that democratic conversation should not be allowed to happen.
Sometime later, the ruling BJP MPs also staged a parallel protest under the Mahatma Gandhi statue. They raised slogans against the parliament proceedings being obstructed by the opposition.
हम भगवान से प्रार्थना कर रहे हैं महात्मा गांधी के उस भजन को गा करके कि भगवान कांग्रेसियों को और जो ऐसे लोग हैं जो माफ़ी मांगने के बाद भी सदन नहीं चलने दे रहे हैं उनको सद्बुद्धि दें ताकि वो सदन चलने दें।
हाउस को चलने देना चाहिए। एक एमपी ने मऊ भी महिला है, यदि उन्होंने कुछ ऐसी बातें कही जो आपत्तिजनक है तो सब लोगों ने उसकी भर्त्सना की है, निंदा की है और उन्होंने स्वयं माफ़ी मांगा है।
9 opposition parties, including the Congress, the Trinamool Congress, the JDU, the RJD, Muslim League and the Samajwadi Party, issued a joint statement seeking a censure motion against Union Minister Sadhvi Niranjan Jyoti.
The government is still adamant on Monday not to pass a resolution. These 9 parties have decided. We will meet again at 10:30 on Monday morning and chalk out our next strategy.
Friday marked the 4th day of non-stop protest against the alleged objectionable remarks by Minister Sadhvi Niranjan Jyoti. Ravinder Shoran's report for Rajya Sabha TV.
News from the states now, and BJP and Shiv Sena are ruling Maharashtra once again after 15 years with the induction of 10 ministers from the Shiv Sena and the 35-day-old Devendra Fadnavis government. 10 ministers took oath on Friday afternoon.
The Shiv Sena has finally switched sides in Maharashtra. After spending a few days on opposition benches, the party MLAs joined the government after the party came to an agreement with old ally, the BJP. Governor Vidyasagar Rao administered the oath of office to 20 ministers, including 10 of the Shiv Sena and 10 from BJP. Out of these, 10 cabinet ministers were sworn in, 5 from each party. The cabinet ministers who took the oath were Girish Bapat, Girish Mahajan, Chandrasekhar Bavankule, Babban Rao Lonikar, Rajkumar Badole, Divakar Raote, Subhash Desai, Ramdas Kadam, Eknath Shinde and Dr. Deepak Sawant. 2 more Sena ministers are expected to take oath during the next cabinet expansion, possibly after the winter session of the state legislature. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, some shocking news now. As many as 60 patients lost their eyesight during cataract surgeries at a free eye camp in Punjab. Patients are claiming compensation and strict action against the doctors, claiming surgeries were performed under unhygienic conditions. A doctor has been arrested.
Medical negligence once again. This time it cost at least 60 people their vision. 62 cataract surgeries at a free eye camp went terribly wrong in the Gurdaspur district of Punjab. 6 victims lost their eyesight permanently. The incident came to light when 16 patients from Amritsar lodged a police complaint against an NGO that organized the camp. The surgery was performed under severely unhygienic conditions, resulting in such grave damage. Punjab Chief Minister Prakash Singh Badal ordered a high-level probe. The centre also sought a report from Punjab government.
We have asked for a report from the Punjab government, but as we have been told that the operations were done by some NGO and it did not have the permission of the state government, we are finding out the details of it.
हम लोगों ने एक तो उनका इलाज करवाना शुरू किया है, प्लस जो कमेटी इंक्वायरी कमेटी रिपोर्ट देगी सिविल सर्जन की, हम लोग क्रिमिनल एक्शन भी उनके खिलाफ लेंगे, एनजीओ के खिलाफ।
यहाँ पे सारे ऑपरेट जो भी हुआ था सबकी नॉर्मल आइज हो गई थी और उनको दिखाई देता घर में एक दिन जाके ये सही सलामत रहे हैं, उसके बाद दूसरे दिन इनको क्या प्रॉब्लम आई मेरे को कुछ पता नहीं है।
The police arrested a private doctor who performed the surgeries and registered a case against the NGO. The hospital neither took permission for the camp nor were the norms followed. All the affected patients were poor and above the age of 60. They are now being treated in the ENT hospital of Amritsar and Gurdaspur. The Chief Minister has announced an interim relief of 1 lakh rupees to each of the affected families. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
We'll take a quick break right now, but coming up on the other side, Filipinos brace for Typhoon Hagupit, which is expected to make landfall on Saturday. Welcome back. You're with the news tonight on Rajya Sabha TV. Well, some international news now, and protests continued for the second day in New York over the chokehold death of an unarmed black man, Eric Garner. Thousands took to the streets across the U.S., disrupting traffic and holding sit-in protests. The protests began yesterday following a grand jury decision not to indict a white police officer responsible for Eric's death. The United Nations has also appealed to U.S. officials to take immediate action to overlook racism concerns across America.
Hands up, don't shoot! Hands up, don't shoot! Hands up, don't shoot!
I'm angry just like everyone here is.
We're here protesting because the system in America is inherently racist and it targets one class of people. And so we're out here for justice.
Anti-racism protests peaking across the United States for the second straight day. Protesters flooded the streets, chanting slogans, blocking traffic, demanding genuine change after the decision not to indict in the chokehold death of Eric Garner. Demonstrators staged a die-in in Brooklyn on Thursday. Black teenager killed in Ferguson, Michael Brown, was also remembered, another victim of racism. In Denver, at least 400 students walked out of Lincoln High School towards the state capitol building in support of protesters in Ferguson, Missouri. As protests continue, the New York mayor promised immediate action. US President Barack Obama applauded his efforts to address public outrage.
People need to know that black lives and brown lives matter as much as white lives. It's what we still have to aspire to. I said it yesterday, I believe it. This is not just a problem in New York City. It is an American problem, an American challenge.
He was just in the White House with us on Monday as we started taking some concrete steps to strengthen the relationship between law enforcement and communities of color, and I intend to take more steps with leaders like him in the months ahead.
Meanwhile, the UN Secretary General appealed to authorities in the United States to tackle the situation as soon as possible.
Secretary General urges all competent authorities in the United States to do everything possible to respond to the demands for greater accountability. And he also welcomes the announcement, I think, by the U.S. Justice Department of an opening of a civil rights investigation in the case.
The protest started after no charges were brought against Officer Daniel Pantaleo for his role in a confrontation that killed unarmed black man Eric Garner. Surprisingly, a union that represents New York City police officers defended the actions of Officer Daniel Pantaleo. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television.
Well, news from Philippines now, where Typhoon Hagupit is drawing closer. Tens of thousands of people living in the coastal and landslide-prone areas have been taken to safer zones. The typhoon has gusts of up to 230 kilometers per hour and is likely to hit on Saturday evening. It, however, weakened slightly as it churned slowly across the Pacific. The typhoon was no longer a Category 5 super typhoon, but is still likely to remain destructive when it makes landfall on Saturday.
Pag ganitong panahon na may darating na bagyo, una kami nag-rescue sa mga ganun sa mga kalsada dahil kailangan namin maproteksyonan ang mga dumadaan na hindi makaharang ang mga kahoy na babagsak sa mga kalsada.
Medyo natatakot kami kaya yun, nag-prepare kami na mag-evacuation para sigurado po kami na hindi po mapahama, kaya yun.
Let's now get you all the other international news and updates in Global Buzz. US President Barack Obama has nominated Ashton Carter as his new defense secretary. Carter served as the Deputy Secretary of Defense from October 2011 to December 2013 and is a close confidant of Obama. India today disputed a landmark UN report which said that $650 billion was spent for projects aimed at adaptation and carbon emissions reduction during 2011-2012. The report was presented at the UN Climate Summit underway in Lima. It includes projects between developed countries which would not benefit developing countries that are in need of the funds. India said the report is misleading as there is no agreed multilateral operational definition of climate finance. In a video appeal, the family of a UK-born American hostage, Lok Sabha, pleaded to Al-Qaeda militants in Yemen to show mercy and release him. Summers was abducted in 2013. The appeal comes a day after a man who identified himself as Summers appeared in a separate video saying his life was in danger. Meanwhile, US officials revealed that they had tried to rescue him last month but failed. The Australian Parliament today approved changes in immigration laws which also include reintroducing the controversial temporary visa for refugees. The new bill allows refugees to live and work in Australia for 3 to 5 years but denies them permanent protection. And South Africans are commemorating the first death anniversary of Nelson Mandela. Various events have been organized across the country, including a wreath-laying ceremony and a cricket match to commemorate the anti-apartheid crusader. Sirens sounded across the country before the commemorative 3-minute silence was held. South Africa's first black president in 2013 died at age 95. And all the sports news now in Sports Beat. The prosecution's appeal against Olympic star Oscar Pistorius' culpable homicide conviction will be held in a Pretoria court next Tuesday. Pistorius was sentenced to 5 years in jail for the negligent killing of his girlfriend, Riva Steenkamp. Prosecutors are challenging the judge's interpretation of the law. They had earlier failed to convince the judge that Pistorius had intended to kill when he fired shots through the toilet door at his Pretoria home. Chances of Australian captain Michael Clarke playing in the next week's test against India in Adelaide are looking up. Clarke came through in the training session despite having struggled with a hamstring injury lately. Australian coach Darren Lehmann was confident Clarke will be able to make it to the test side with the guidance of the medical staff. A list of international tennis stars will descend for the Indian leg of the International Premier Tennis League from Saturday. Roger Federer, Novak Djokovic and Pete Sampras will be enthralling the crowds. The star-studded lineup is expected to give a big push to the league. And Tiger Woods made a slow start to his latest post-injury comeback on Thursday. Woods fired a 5 over par 77 to stand last after round 1 of the 18-player Hero World Challenge. Woods ended the layoff with 4 bogeys, 1 birdie and a double bogey. This is his first tournament since the PGA Championship in August, when he took time off to recover from a back injury. Well, that's it in the news tonight, but stay tuned to Rajya Sabha TV for the latest news and updates.